Welcome to DungeonCraft. Today we're going to discuss initiative and why you might consider getting rid of it altogether. Welcome to DungeonCraft. I am Professor Dungeon Master, coming to you from beautiful Dungeon University, wearing my +1 tweed jacket of insight, and today we're going to talk about initiative and why I don't even think it's really necessary. I'm one of the more radical professors here at the university. I'm the Noam Chomsky of games. This is my first rules hack video, and I wanted to make it my first because it's about a very radical idea, which is totally ditching the initiative system. I realize a lot of veteran players are watching this right now and they're freaking out and they're clutching their player's handbook, but just follow my logic, go through the video, and then you can make your own decision. First, we need to go into the whole history of initiative to look at why are there initiative rules in the first place. You might think the concept of initiative was created by Dungeons & Dragons creator Gary Gygax with the first edition of the game, but if you thought that, you'd be wrong. Initiative is really the brainchild of War of the Worlds and Time Machine author H.G. Wells. In addition to being a science fiction author, H.G. Wells was also a game designer, creating a rule system called Little Wars, which was the first set of formal rules for fighting tabletop battles with dice, tape measures, in those days it was strings, and little tin soldiers. Initiative was determined by flipping a coin. The player who won the toss got to place their armies and move them first. This would be very important in a miniature war game because where you deploy your troops and how you move them will determine the entire field for the rest of the game. And wargaming became very popular, particularly in the United Kingdom and Europe, and eventually it made its way to the United States, where it was very popular in the Lake Geneva and Twin Cities areas. There was a wargaming enthusiast named Gary Gygax who created his own set of miniature tabletop wargaming rules called chainmail, and chainmail was used for medieval battles. And it also included a subchapter called Man-to-Man, which was about skirmishes and having individual combats. And Gary Gygax had the system where you determine initiative by rolling a six-sided die, both sides, and the higher die wins. Eventually, Chainmail and Man-to-Man evolved into Dungeons & Dragons, and Gygax kept that initiative system. Early D&D had both sides rolling one six-sided die and comparing the results, and the higher roll won. Subsequent editions of D&D altered the initiative system. So in 2nd edition D&D, everyone rolled their initiative individually with a 10-sided die, and the lowest rolls went first, and initiative was still calculated though every round you rolled a new initiative. In Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 it was changed to you roll a d20, roll high, and add your dexterity bonus, and that still survives in 5th edition today. 4th edition we're not even going to really talk about. It's like a bad marriage. We just don't mention it. So today, in the official rules of D&D, you roll a 20-sided die, you add your dexterity bonus, and everyone acts in order from highest to the lowest. And this initiative is static. It doesn't change round per round. You roll it once at the beginning of combat, and it stays that way. Now, many D&D players have discovered that this is quite boring because you have the same static batting order, so to speak, and it never changes, so you know exactly where you're going, and it's very predictable. Wizards of the Coast have heard your thoughts, and Mike Merle's the lead designer for Dungeons & Dragons, is developing a new initiative system that he's using at conventions. And he's got some pretty interesting ideas. Essentially, everyone rolls initiative individually every single round, like the old version of the game, and you base your initiative, you get a different initiative die based on what you decide to do. So if it's a ranged attack, it's D4, and if it's a melee attack, it's D8, spell is D12, and any sort of movement or anything else is D6. You roll the initiative and you attack in the order from lowest to the highest, so the Dungeon Master will call out, okay, who got a 1? You two got a 2. Okay, so you can go and you can make your attacks together, and it's recalculated every single round. This is an interesting idea. It makes sense on a few different levels. Like, logically, a bow would probably move fast. Faster than a sword, certainly. We imagine wizards trying to remember these spells, and they have the words and incantations and hand motions, so it would probably take them longer, but I still don't like it. It creates this batting order and this turn-based mentality. You're just figuring out it a different way. There are two categories of reasons why I don't like initiative, and they have to do with realism and playability. So first, realism. Okay, so that whole idea of adding your dexterity bonus. Dexterity is how good you are with your fingers, and that has nothing to do with how fast you move. Dexterity would help you juggle balls and bowling pins. It doesn't help you attack faster. If you've ever studied martial arts or watched mixed martial arts or boxing, what a fight looks like is the combatants circle each other and then essentially go in and exchange blows at the same time, and then they separate and they circle each other some more, and once one sees the advantage, they go in and they exchange blows simultaneously and they separate, and that happens until one gets a lucky shot or somehow gets the advantage. They don't stand around waiting for the other opponent to strike them. The last time that was done is like the 1700s with dueling, where one combatant would shoot at the other one and then wait politely as his opponent took their shot, and then they would reload and do it again. If anything, what matters in a fight is the combat experience that you have. So if you read the excellent book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, which is about how we make decisions, and it's very quickly, it's not just seconds, it's tenths of seconds. We make our decisions based on how much experience we have in that situation. So if you do take martial arts 2 or 3 times a week, you take a Taekwondo class, you're going to make decisions in a real fight faster than a person with no Taekwondo training. But still faster than you is going to be a Navy SEAL, because all they do is train for combat and get into combat situations. That's their job 24/7. So if you want to talk realism, really the fighters and characters of higher level, they should move first. Rogues should definitely move last, because think about it, they spend all their time avoiding combat and trying to attack from a distance and catch people flat-footed and attack from behind. So they would be among the last people to attack. Now let's talk game design and playability. So essentially what rolling for initiative means is you're going to roll this die to see in what order you're going to roll this die. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's kind of redundant when you think about it. And no matter which of these systems you use, the fact is you're creating a batting order and you're creating a turn order, and waiting for your turn is boring. I like my combat to be fast and cinematic, and I like games where you don't sit around waiting for your turn. Everyone goes at once. That idea where we're going to take a turn and then the other person's going to take a turn, I think that's really a convention that's left over from war games that we really just don't need anymore for the type of game we're playing. All right, so now I'm going to break it down for you how to run a combat without rolling for initiative at all. And the steps are this. 1, everyone states what they're going to do, and once you've stated it, you can't change it. You are locked into that move. Number 2, you're going to roll the dice. Everyone rolls the dice, monsters and heroes all at once. Step 3, the Dungeon Master looks at all the dice results and narrates what happened. Alright, so let's go to the table and I'll show you how it works. So our heroes have just stumbled upon a room that contains a dozen hostile goblins. First, everyone must declare what they're doing before the round begins, and you can't change it. This includes the monsters, and you get just 60 seconds if we're playing with 3 to 4 players. If we're playing with 6 to 8, I'll give them up to 2 minutes to plan. The fighter moves to engage, and is met in the center of the room by 2 goblins. The cleric and paladin follow suit, forming a defensive line. This elven archer moves into position, aiming at this goblin right here where he has line of sight. The thief is throwing a throwing dagger at this goblin on the south side of the room. The wizard is casting 3 magic missiles, and she has to declare where they're going before the round begins. She decides to shoot one at this goblin just to make sure he's killed. Same with this one that the archer is aiming at, and decides to fire the last one at this center goblin. The goblins in the rear wouldn't get to take a turn because there's nowhere for them to get in to the line to fight. Step 2, everyone rolls their attack dice and the spell damage all at once. So we have dice for the fighter, archer, wizard, cleric, rogue, and on the goblin side it's 6 total dice. Step 3. The players sort through the dice to see what happened. The paladin and cleric miss. The fighter hits, as does the archer. The wizard scores maximum damage on all her targets. And the thief scores a 20 and will score double damage on hers. On the goblin side, only 2 hits are scored, on the fighter and the cleric. Now damage would be calculated. The damage dice indicate that 3 goblins are killed. The fighter suffers 8 hit points of damage, and the cleric 4. Both sides now have another 2 minutes to decide what they're going to do. This method is way more realistic because it makes combat seem like the crazy, desperate clusterfudge it really is. It also forces the players to work together before the dice are rolled because they have to react to these situations in the previous round. The fighter was really injured. Can someone move to help him? Is it even possible, with the cleric already engaged? Let's think about this logically for a second. The paladin is going to hit with an 18, but the goblins are going to miss her. So in effect, she won the initiative, but instead of requiring 2 rolls to do it, we just did it in 1. Now, why don't I let the players change their minds? In real combat, you get tunnel vision. You just focus on what's right in front of you, just on what you're doing. Someone's coming after you with a knife. You're just looking at that knife. You can't turn your back on a guy who's trying to stab you with a knife, to root through your pockets, to find a potion of healing for the guy who's dying next to you. Once you're engaged in a fight to the death, it's a fight to the death. combat round is supposed to last only a few seconds. You don't have the time to change your mind in the middle of what you're doing. Whenever I tell people I don't use initiative, I get asked about different situations, including ranged attacks and surprised attacks. So I'm going to go over those situations with you now and show you how I handle them. Let's say the thief here sneaks up on this goblin from behind. It's a free attack. The goblin can't attack her because he can't see her. Same thing if you just go up to somebody and hit them. That's a free attack. Ranged attacks. Let's say this goblin here wants to attack the archer here. Ranged weapons always go first, and if the archer can kill the target in one shot, the target's roll is void. In this case, the archer rolls 16, and the goblin rolls 19. But if the archer scores a kill, the goblin is dead, and the 19 is null and void. Spells. I consider spells to be ranged attacks, which means just like an arrow, they're going to go off automatically. You know, I'm not really convinced of the whole idea that it takes a long time to cast the spell with all the memorization and incantations and hand gestures. To me, that seems like a way of depowering wizards after you've powered them. A spell for a wizard should be just as fast as a sword for a fighter. Otherwise, why would anyone be a wizard? There's another group of goblins trying to sneak up on the party from behind. The archer perceives them at the last moment. At the beginning of the round, they declare their action. The dungeon master says the goblins are charging the door. The archers move to turn and shut the door. Who gets to the door first? The goblins roll a 9, the archer an 18. He beats them to the door and bars it. In this case, the goblins were rolling to attack the door, and the archer was rolling to shut the door. This represents both the archer's speed at getting to the door as well as how efficiently he accomplished the task. So he effectively won the initiative by rolling the higher roll. A separate roll really isn't necessary. The players manage to pick the lock of this door and sneak up on a room full of goblins. They're busy watching two scorpions fight, because that's just what I imagine goblins doing in their spare time. These goblins aren't going to have their swords drawn, they're not going to have their shields ready, they're not prepared for an attack. In this case, I give the players +4 to hit, to reflect the fact that the goblins aren't ready to defend themselves. Then I would assign the goblins a -4 to hit. Why? Because they don't have their shields, they don't have their swords ready. One or two of them might roll a 19 or a 20, and those would be the goblins who are lucky enough to have their swords out just in time. One more quick scenario. In this case, the players have wandered into an ogre's lair and have decided to liberate the treasure from the ogre. In this case, the cleric, the fighter, and the paladin have surrounded the ogre, and the archer, thief, and wizard are behind them. The attacks are still going to be simultaneous, but the ogre can only strike the cleric, the fighter, or the paladin because the rest of the characters are out of the ogre's strike range. And that's how you would handle most of the common situations that would occur in combat without actually rolling for initiative. Now, I gotta tell you, if you have experienced players, people who've played Dungeons & Dragons for 10 or 20 or 30 years or more, you're going to meet with some resistance. By doing away with initiative, you're bucking 40 years of role-playing game history. The fact that you have some resistance isn't surprising. One of my players, when I said we're going to try eliminating initiative, she said, well, that sucks. That means we can be killed at any time. Yes, that's the point. Combat is terrifying. Once you've entered combat, it's a life or death situation. It should be exciting and terrifying and thrilling, and there should always be the possibility that no matter how high level you are, you can be injured in a combat. This makes combat totally terrifying and unpredictable, and that's the way I think it should be. I find that new players are much more receptive to this initiative system because they don't have anything to compare it to, they don't have any preconceptions about the game, and the idea of everyone attacks at once is logical, and it leads to a much faster game. I'm going to point out that other role-playing games, like the award-winning Dungeon World, have already done away with their initiative system. There's no initiative system in Dungeon World. And so I think that it's just proof I'm not the only crazy guy here thinking these things. Other people have decided, you know what, when you think about it, if you were designing a game from the ground up, you don't really need an initiative system. So give my non-initiative system a try, and let me know how it went on the comments below, which are probably going to be pretty controversial. If you like this video, click like. If you don't like my idea, click like anyway. For more great DungeonCraft videos, subscribe. This is Professor Dungeon Master for DungeonCraft. Thanks for watching, and may all your future rolls be natural 20.